The money should go back to you by way of a Doge dividend. He said this. It's important to hear it. Listen.
Sir, Elon Musk is proposing potentially giving money to Americans based on what Doge is finding. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I love it. A 20% dividend, so to speak, for the money that we're saving by going after the waste and fraud and abuse and all of the other things that are happening. I think it's a great idea.
How much money do you think?
Could be a lot. I mean, if it's 20%, we'd give back a lot of money to the taxpayer. And also it would give an incentive for the taxpayer to go out and report things to us where we can save money.
I think people would like that. Get a 20% dividend. It would be somewhere around $5,000 and still counting. Well, most people like that idea. That is, unless you're a Democrat. Like I said, they can't see the forest for the trees here. They're on all the wrong issues, including trying to fight this one, Jasmine Crockett out of Texas, talking to her local news.
He right now has a 53% approval rating. It's higher than...
Forgive me. That was her on national news. Jasmine Crockett going on to The View to complain about Trump, of course. And, you know, she found a very delightful, willing audience to hear her. You know, do you guys wonder about the applause that they have on that thing? The whole applause where, you know, they just keep cheering Whoopi Goldberg and others on. I mean, that's kind of wild, don't you think? That's a little bit weird. Well, Jasmine Crockett went on, not just The View. I mean, she's clearly doing the rounds, shall we say. But she also went on local news, I guess. No, forgive me. This is like ABC News Online. They're trying to migrate online. You see, they're trying to stream more because obviously this is where it's at. This is where it's at. Jasmine probably wouldn't want to come on this show. And I wouldn't subject you guys to that. It's just worth hearing her in little sound bites here and there. She doesn't like a $5,000 Doge dividend. Not one bit. Hear her saying why it's all wrong.
Now, President Trump says he likes the idea of giving some of the savings from Doge back to Americans as kind of a dividend. Would you support that?
Listen, he's just telling a lie. He's not the one that had anything to do with the $1,200 refunds that people had during the midst of COVID that was done by a Democratic House and Democratic Senate. Right now, what they're going to do is say, hey, we want to give you a refund, but Congress won't let us because they already know that there's just no money for that. The only reason that those refunds came before was because we were living in different times. This was a time in which hopefully we won't ever go through again. We had a once in a lifetime pandemic. The bad part is that I don't know if it's once in a lifetime because we know that Ebola, unfortunately, was detected right here in New York here recently. And if we continue down this road of getting rid of scientists or deciding that we don't want to rely on experts as it relates to what they're telling us to do, or we don't want to deal with vaccines and medicine in this country, then we may be facing not only our next pandemic, but our next 2, 3, or 4 pandemics because of their incompetence. So no, we are not in the business of giving out money. And honestly, I don't know what $5,000 will do for you.
Really? Jasmine, you don't think that $5,000 might help the average American family? Wow, I guess Congress is really treating you well there, honey bunny, right? I mean, maybe you're getting some of that USAID money too. I mean, she's all over the place. First of all, the COVID checks, certainly number 3, was uncalled for and put us in the inflationary disaster that we are in today because you had the Federal Reserve printing. Later on in the show, I'm going to be welcoming the CEO of American Heart for Gold. We're going to talk about that printing press because that's what's led to gold skyrocketing, now reaching somewhere around $3,000 an ounce. So we printed too much money. And then you had Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi out there greenlighting trillions of dollars more in spending. And so what happened? What do you think happens when that kind of thing goes down? That's inflation. And by the way, it's not coming from real savings. It's not coming from anywhere. It's just coming from a freaking printing press. What Elon Musk is talking about doing is entirely different. They're talking about shrinking the size of the federal government so that guess what? You don't have to pay as much in taxes. And hey, maybe you get a one-time dividend on a thing. But this woman, Jasmine Crockett, is clueless. Absolutely clueless. And you know what? When Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir, was on CNBC the other day and said that his party was basically committing suicide. He's no longer part of the party because they just don't get it. They're like wrong on every single issue. He's a big deal tech CEO. He was right. Like they just don't get it. For example, the trans stuff, kids getting mutilated, and they want to stick up for, okay, we're going to have the hospitals and the healthcare system. We need to keep pushing money into this so that 12-year-old kids can lose valuable body parts that they kind of need for the rest of their lives. I'm sorry, and I don't mean to be graphic, but Jasmine is on the wrong side of everything. And you know who else is on the wrong side of everything? That would be the ladies on The View. The View, which frankly, I think is on its last legs. I really do. I think Whoopi's in the middle of contract negotiations. She's trying to be careful and she's trying to be quiet. But don't forget, right, what Elon Musk said. I want to play it, and then we're going to go back to The View and see what this Jasmine Crockett, the representative out of Texas, who doesn't think you need $5,000 for your family, is trying to say about Donald Trump and why he won. Because it will scare you. Anyway, here's Elon.
I really want to emphasize to people that this is a very important point. If we don't solve the deficit, there won't be money for medical care. There won't be money for Social Security. We either solve the deficit or all we'll be doing is paying debt. It's got to be solved, or there's no medical care, there's no Social Security, there's no nothing. It's got to be solved. It's not optional. America will go bankrupt if this.
America will go bankrupt, he said. You know, Americans get that. They understand that. They know that their money wasn't going into the right places, and now it's getting all exposed. And somehow Jasmine wants you to think that's all fake news. The ladies on The View nodding in agreement. This show is bad, okay? But just quickly, it's worth understanding the other side.
He right now has a 53% approval rating. It's higher than it's ever been. 70% believe that he's fulfilling his promises, and 45% believe Democrats should be more moderate. What do you take away? I think there's a lot to make of those numbers, but what's your takeaway from that?
My takeaway is just like the election. We've got to do better at education. People don't understand, but you will understand when those hospitals in rural America start closing down even more. You will understand when you don't have your Social Security. You will understand when your Medicaid, your Medicare goes away. You will understand as planes continue to fall out of the sky. Soon you will understand why it's important to maybe have somebody that isn't loud and ridiculous, and maybe Sleepy Joe is what we wanted because we could at least sleep at night.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay, so first of all, the planes falling out of the sky. Interesting how she's trying to pin that on Donald Trump. No way, okay? It's funny to me because it's like a narrative, a talking point that they're echoing over and over again on the left. And apparently one of the ladies that got the talking point is Oprah Winfrey's best friend. That would be one Gayle King over on CBS's morning show that nobody watches. I can say that because I used to work there. And I call people and say, well, will you come on the show? And they'd be like, what is it? I'm like, CBS Morning. And I'm like, it's like the Today Show, except it's on CBS. Anyway, nobody watches it. It's a terrible show. The Delta CEO, for some reason, went on there. Badger Dodge, thank you. Welcome to the program. And this is what was said. Take a listen.
The Trump administration recently fired many employees of the FAA administration. Do those cuts worry you? And do you think that impacts the safety? I know you just said it's the safest way to travel, but after looking at all these mishaps, a lot of people are very nervous. Do these cuts affect you?
The cuts do not affect us, Gail. I've been in close communication with the Secretary of Transportation. I understand that the cuts at this time are something that are raising questions, but the reality is there's over 50,000 people that work at the FAA, and the cuts, I understand, were 300 people, and they were in non-critical safety functions. The Trump administration has committed to investing deeply in terms of improving the overall technologies that are used in the air traffic control systems and modernizing the skies. They've committed to hiring additional controllers and investigators and safety investigators. So, no, I'm not concerned with that at all.
Ed,
yeah, she's having a little tough time with that, right? Gail wants to blame it all on Trump, just like the ladies on The View with Jasmine Crockett want to blame everything they can on Trump. And then as for, well, how did he win the election? And why is it that people are actually thinking highly of him? As you heard the lone conservative never Trumper on that panel on The View say, like, why would people actually approve of him? Why would he have a 53% approval rating? Why would he have 70% of America saying, you know what, he's doing what he promised he would do? And Jasmine's answer is that people are misinformed, that they're not educated enough. Gosh darn it, I think I've heard that one before. In fact, Joe Biden's biggest regret about this entire election process was that people were just not well enough informed. Apparently, he should have put a whole lot more money into USAID so that he could influence Politico, New York Times, and a few others a bit more, right? This is Ayanna Pressley. I've showed you guys this one before, but unbelievable to me because she's the congressperson out of Massachusetts, and she thinks that the answer to everything is just censoring. I mean, they're like in love with what's going on in Germany. You know, you post a meme and suddenly you got a SWAT team at your door. Ayanna Pressley saying, we just need to censor people and we'll work with somebody who will censor the American people. I'm not making this up. Watch.
Look, let me tell you something. I'll take a bit of umbrage here. I'll speak on behalf of my colleagues. I think I can say we are all willing to work with anyone who's serious about doing the work of censoring the American people and advancing progress. But they are not serious.
It's kind of sick, right? Like, it's sort of sick. They're saying Donald Trump is succeeding right now because the people are too stupid. They don't understand real news from fake news. Actually, I think they understood it really well. I mean, turned out that Hunter Biden laptop, that was all fake news. When your CIA folks and ex-spooks and hacks all came forward, 51 of them, and said, just so you know, this is Russian misinformation, disinformation. Well, they were the ones with they were the U.S. misinformation. Think about what they were doing. Like, there's no faith in our institutions anymore because this top-down power structure thought they could decide it all. And if there was any doubt, well, they would just make sure that the media did their bidding. This is David Sachs, who's our new crypto czar, talking on his podcast, All In, about how they paid for this misinformation. They paid to try and convince you had to vote for Biden.
Okay, so we knew the U.S. government runs a $2 trillion deficit every year. We're in debt almost $40 trillion. And we also knew that anytime anyone tries to cut anything in Washington, the whole city screams bloody murder. Okay, so the question is just why? Well, now we know. The money is all going to them. It's like round tripping to them. New York Times, getting paid. Politico, getting paid. Bill Kristol, perennial warmonger, getting paid. Ukraine, getting paid. Like 11 out of 12 publications, Ukraine, getting paid.
Incredible.
Viktor Orban, who's the prime minister of Hungary, was saying that he's very popular in Hungary. His political opposition, funded by USAID. In Poland, the left-wing political opposition funded by USAID, and on and on and on it goes.
BBC, you wonder why everyone in the UK is so, yeah.
Like
I couldn't believe the BBC is getting paid.
Every left-wing organization in the world seems to be getting paid by this slush fund at USAID, which disperses about $50 billion a year. That's $1 billion a week. That's actually a lot of money. And so it makes you wonder, you know, the left in general tries to portray itself as a movement of the people, that it's grassroots. This is the exact opposite. This is AstroTurf. This is basically money coming from the top down out of Washington to fund all of these groups, maybe not even in the United States, like all over the world. So it makes you wonder, what is the real level of local support for these left-wing policies all over the world?
There's no support. There's no support at all. I mean, maybe among some little fringe, you know, the academic type with their PhDs in transgender study. There's no support for any of this. It's all coming undone. Every bit of it. I'm in there slashing. It's pretty darn good. And you know what? For those that are like, okay, maybe they're going too far, here's a good headline for you. Take a look at this. Daily Mail first reported it. Security fraud expert now leads the agency. This is amazing. He was fired because he was working with Doge, and this social security fraud expert is now leading. He's now in charge of the agency. I mean, this is incredible, you guys, right? So he's like, I confess, I helped Doge. And what happened? His boss fired him. And then Donald Trump found out about it. And he brought him back, and now he's running the whole thing. So it shows you, if you're on the right page and you want to do the right thing and you want to expose the fraud, that you have a future. Elon Musk tweeting this story out saying there are good people in government who want to eliminate fraud and waste. Amazingly, Leland was fired by the Social Security Administration's upper management for trying to help Doge find the taxpayer savings. I mean, can you believe that? And thanks to President Trump, he was brought back right away, and now he is upper management. In other words, promote the good players, exit the bad players. That's what you got to do.